The murder of 17-year-old Kelly Ann Bates, widely thought to be the most gruesome murder in Britain's history. Today we take a look at a disturbing case of Kelly Ann Bates. "16-year-old Kelly Ann Bates stood in the kitchen of her parents' Margeret and Tommy Bates' house. She had big news to share with them. She told them that she had been dating a guy called Dave for 2 years and had kept it from them. The worst news were yet to come, however. Out stepped Dave. Her parents were shocked and disgusted. Dave was clearly much older than Kelly Ann. In England, the legal system considered Kelly Ann an adult, so her parents could not force her to leave Dave. Kelly informed them he was 32 years old. Kelly Ann's mother, Margaret, asked around town if anyone knew anything about a 32-year-old David Smith. No one has ever heard of him. They later found out that her daughter lied to them, and he was actually 49 years old, and his name was James Patterson Smith. That would mean that when James and Kelly Ann started dating, he was 48 years old and she was just 14. They met when Kelly Ann was busy babysitting. If their daughter dating a guy 32 years her senior, keeping it a secret and then lying about his age and name was not worrying enough, James Patterson Smith had a violent past. James Smith was an unemployed divorcee living in the Gorton area of Manchester. His marriage had ended after 10 years in 1980 due to his violence towards his wife. He then commenced an affair between 1980 and 1982 with a 20-year-old Tina Watson, whom he used as a punch bag, even subjecting her to severe beatings while she was pregnant with his child. She said, "At first it was now and again, just a little tap, but in the end it was every day. He would smack me in the face or hit me over the head with an ashtray. He would kick me in the legs or between the legs." Watson managed to escape from the relationship, during which Smith had also attempted to drown her while she was bathing. In 1982, Smith then began a relationship with a 15-year-old Wendy Mothershead, who was also a victim of his violence. In one attack, he held her head underwater in the kitchen sink in an attempt to drown her. Kelly Ann started spending more and more time at Smith's house. She was always bubbly and talkative, but she changed dramatically the more time she spent with James. Then Kelly Ann spent nights at James' house, and her parents would not see her for days. Kelly Ann eventually announced to her parents that she was moving in with James. Margeret and Tommy obviously refused, but due to their fear of losing their daughter forever if they forbade her, they gave in, stating that she had to keep in contact with them. Kelly Ann left school and started working. She visited her parents even less. During one visit, Margaret would notice bruises on Kelly Ann's arms. Kelly Ann gave the typical excuse of having bumped into something. Her parents went to Child Protection Services, but because Kelly Ann was over the United Kingdom's age of consent, they could do nothing and they could not respond to Margaret's concerns. One day when Margaret came home from work, she noticed that a light in Kelly Ann's room was on. She went to investigate. Inside, she saw Kelly Ann with her back to her, busy with a suitcase. "What are you doing?" Margaret asked. Instead of answering, Kelly Ann simply turned around. She kept making excuses protecting James. Her parents convinced her, however, to break up with him and move back in with him. Unfortunately, they did not stay that way for long, and Kelly Ann decided to give James another chance and move back in with him. She also quit her job and was permanently at James's house. Her parents almost never saw Kelly Ann anymore. One time when she did come visit, Margaret noticed teeth marks on her daughter's arm. Kelly Ann told her that she fell over a fence and got stuck in the mesh. After another instance of not seeing their daughter for over a month, they went to James's house to confront him. He denied everything and they did not get to see their daughter. Kelly Ann missed Mother's Day and both her parents' birthdays. Instead, she just wrote a card. Margaret noticed that her handwriting was not her daughter's, and knew that Smith had written them. Understandably worried, she and her husband went to James's house. Everything was shut and nobody opened up. They then went to the police, who said they can't do anything either, since Smith at that time had no prior criminal record, and no one had previously reported him for domestic abuse. Margeret and Tommy was devastated and felt hopeless, not knowing what to do to get her daughter back. One day while they were at home, they got a knock on the door that would change their lives forever. It was a policeman telling them that Kelly Ann had died due to drowning. Earlier that day, James Smith had gone to the police station, telling police that his girlfriend had accidentally drowned in a bathtub. When police arrived at his house, they saw Kelly Ann's blood smeared on the walls. Seeing the state of Kelly Ann's body and learning of James' violent past, the police heavily doubted that her death was accidental. She had 150 injuries on her body. The injuries includes scalding to her buttocks and left leg, burns on her thigh caused by the application of a hot iron, a fractured arm, multiple stab wounds caused by knives, forks and scissors, stab wounds inside of her mouth, crush injuries to both hands, mutilation of her ears, nose, eyebrows, mouth, lips and genitalia, wounds caused by a spade, both eyes gouged out, later stab wounds to the eye sockets, partial scalping. William Lawler, the Home Office pathologist who examined her body, said, "In my career, I've examined almost 600 victims of homicide, but I've never come across injuries so extensive." The pathologist determined that her eyes had been removed not less than 5 days and not more than 3 weeks before her death. She had been starved, having lost around 20 kilograms in weight, and had not received water for several days before her death. In her trial, James denied murder and said he was the victim, that her wounds were self-inflicted to make him look bad. The jury at Manchester Crown Court took 1 hour to find 49-year-old Smith guilty of Bates' murder. After viewing the disturbing images from Kelly Ann's autopsy and hearing detailed descriptions of the torture Smith committed, the jurors reportedly were traumatized. Manchester Crown Court offered professional counseling services to the jurors, who all accepted. In later interviews, Margaret would recall that day she met James in her kitchen. She looked at her kitchen knife and thought about killing him, now regretting she didn't. She also said at one time, when they were at James' house, he showed him a hole in the floor, and he said it was due to a gas leak. Smith allegedly kept Kelly Ann in that hole, it turns out. I truly believe this is one of the most horrific murders, if not the most horrific murder of all time. It was a senseless death, and one that could have easily been avoided. The police and child protection services did absolutely nothing. As harsh as it seems, I also think her parents had a share of the blame. They only started doing something when they saw their child come home with bruises and teeth marks. I don't know about you guys, but I feel they should have done something the day they found out that a 16-year-old daughter was dating a 49-year-old man.